Mark, Jason, and Nancy had been friends since elementary school. They were just friends at first, but the boys developed a competition for Nancy's attention and affection as they grew up. They both really liked her, so they competed for her attention and win over her affection. Nancy treated both of them well and didn't choose either one. After graduating from school, they didn't meet as much but kept in touch. Jason was from a wealthy family, so he was expected to go to university. Nancy went to a community college, and Mark went to work as a mechanic with his father. He had loved cars since he was little, and often worked with his father in the garage. So he was already a pretty good mechanic when he graduated. After finishing university, Jason got a good position in his father's company, and Nancy went to work at a bank. Today was the worst day in Mark's life. He was walking home and just didn't know what to do with his anger, rage, and resentment. Nancy was getting married to Jason. She chose his friend. Of course, since Jason's father had promised him to help open his own company after the wedding, he had a good future. What could Mark offer? He was planning to open his small shop, but that couldn't compare to Jason's financial success. Somewhere deep down, Mark understood that he wasn't bothered so much by his broken, unhappy heart, but his bruised ego. When he got home, Mark unexpectedly noticed Amanda. He had known her since they were young. She lived 2 doors down, but he had never paid her any particular attention. She was a couple years younger and had always been quiet and shy, like a mouse. As a child, she ran after him, trying to join their friend group, but none of them felt the same, so over time, she stopped trying and kept her distance. To his surprise, Mark noted that Amanda had grown up. She was now a beautiful young woman who was fit, had long brown hair and green eyes you could drown in. Mark's emotions had found an unusual outlet. He went up to her, grabbed her hand, and said, "Amanda, will you marry me?" She looked at him startled. He started to feel uneasy. "I will," Amanda answered suddenly and quietly. They got married a week later. It may have been one of the strangest events in their young lives. They didn't look like newlyweds. They weren't glowing. They were silent and rarely smiled. The first kiss was a formality that had to be done. Amanda sometimes looked at Mark with her big, beautiful eyes to convince herself it wasn't a dream. Amanda's parents looked at their daughter sadly with their eyes full of regret. 6 months went by. Mark and Amanda's married life wasn't a happy one. They were more neighborly than anything. Amanda wanted a baby, but they couldn't get pregnant. They even went to a doctor to get tested and were told that Amanda's tests showed no issues. Amanda's grandma told her one day that it probably just wasn't the right time. They simply weren't ready to be parents, so God wasn't giving them a baby. When Mark came home from work, Amanda was nowhere to be found. It was already pretty late, so he decided to call her parents. "Mrs. Rose, is Amanda there? Did she come to complain?" Mark asked with frustration in his voice. "What happened, Mark? Did you have a fight?" she answered anxiously. "Amanda would never do that. She never complained about you, although I suspect she had reason to. Actually, she's never said anything bad about you at all. Do you still not get it? We really didn't want her to marry you. Everyone knows you married her because you were mad at Nancy. But Amanda's done everything she could her whole life to get your attention. She was a good student and athlete too. Amazing young men went after her who really loved her, but she never gave them a chance. And when you made that unfortunate proposal, she didn't want to listen to anyone else. She decided to dedicate her life to you. She said she'd do anything to make you love her. She has loved you since she was young, and it's only gotten stronger every day." She stopped talking. Mark was floored. He didn't expect to hear that. He was sure Amanda had agreed to marry him only because no one else had proposed. He was sure that the most she felt for him was tolerance. These 6 months had raced in front of his eyes. He remembered how she walked him to work every morning and met him every evening. She never hung onto his neck or went in for a kiss. She just looked into his eyes, wished him a good morning, a good day, and a good night. He remembered how she always asked what he wanted to eat. She was an astounding cook. Mark had never eaten such delicious food anywhere else, so he always tried to eat at home. He remembered how she always listened when he would tell her something, how she always supported him, and how she gave him practical advice when he asked. He remembered how he had treated her unfairly sometimes. He would call her clumsy when she hurt herself instead of trying to help. He would say she had butterfingers if she dropped something. And then, the fight this morning. Amanda was writing poetry that was pretty good. She read him a poem this morning, but he got a work call. There was a problem, and he was in a terrible mood. Instead of listening and praising her, he said horrible things and left, slamming the door behind him. After remembering all that, Mark felt terrible. He was such a fool. How could he not see, not notice? How could he not understand that Amanda was the best thing to happen to him? Where could she be? Where should I look? Mark asked worriedly. She got upset once back in school. She ran off and we looked for her half the night. We found her in a corner of the park. There's a bench. I think she told me it was her favorite place. She loved going there when she felt bad. Mark had never felt anything like this. He hung up the phone, quickly got into his car, and went to look for Amanda. He tried to remember what the poem was about that she had read that morning. Everything started to become clear. It was about love and snowflakes. When he got to the park, Mark saw police cars. He started to feel very anxious. He ran as fast as he could. He saw some police in that far corner. Mark was flying now. He was scared, terrified that something horrible had happened. He gathered his strength, went to the police officer and asked, "What happened?" They said that a girl had been attacked, injured, and taken to the hospital. Thank God someone walking their dog passed by. He helped stop the offender and called both the police and an ambulance. Mark didn't remember how he got to the hospital. The nurse told him that Amanda was in surgery and he needed to wait for the doctor. Mark couldn't sit still. He knew he couldn't forgive himself if something had happened. The doctor came out and said that Amanda had been stabbed, but thankfully, it wasn't too deep. She had come out of surgery and everything would be okay. Mark sat at her bed and held her hand. When she woke up and saw his face, Amanda thought it was a dream. He had never been attentive, gentle, or caring like this before. "Amanda, dear, forgive me. I was wrong. Oh God, I was wrong. I'll do everything to make you happy," he told her without letting go of her hand or averting his eyes. Amanda joked that if she needed to get surgery for him to be like this, she was ready to go back under the knife. "What are you saying? I'm never going to leave you alone again. I'll always be with you." 7 months passed. Amanda took a long time to pick out a dress to wear that fit her. She was pregnant and would soon give birth to twins. Her stomach was growing by the hour, and clothes that fit yesterday were already too small now. Mark patiently waited, sitting on the bed, looking lovingly at his beloved wife's body. They were going shopping because they had tons to still get, and they didn't have much time left. Amanda had a necklace with a golden snowflake on. She did everything so he would love her, and her love was enough to receive that in return.